Lieutenant Sarah Martinez stood at attention as the morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base in Coronado, California. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that she was finally here among the elite Navy SEALs, the reality felt heavier than she had imagined. The other SEALs watched her with cold, skeptical eyes as she walked across the compound. Their whispers followed her like a persistent shadow. Sarah could hear fragments of their conversations floating through the air like poisoned darts aimed at her confidence. "What's a girl doing here?" muttered Petty Officer Jake Thompson, a burly man with arms covered in tattoos. His voice carried just loud enough for Sarah to hear every word. "This isn't a place for playing dress-up." Chief Petty Officer Mike Rodriguez, a veteran with 15 years of service, shook his head as he watched Sarah approach the briefing room. "I've seen plenty of tough soldiers, but this is different. SEALs need brothers they can count on, not someone who might break under pressure." Sarah kept her face expressionless, but inside, her heart pounded against her ribs. She had trained for 2 years to earn her place here. Every morning before dawn, she had pushed her body beyond its limits. She had completed the same grueling exercises as every other SEAL candidate. Her scores in marksmanship, underwater demolition, and tactical planning were among the highest in her class. But none of that seemed to matter to the men surrounding her now. During the morning briefing, Commander Davis outlined their upcoming mission in Afghanistan. As he spoke about enemy positions and extraction points, Sarah noticed how the other SEALs unconsciously shifted away from her. It was subtle, but the message was clear. She was an outsider in their brotherhood. "Martinez," Commander Davis called out, his voice sharp and professional. "You'll be providing Overwatch support during the operation. Stay back and cover our advance." Several SEALs exchanged glances. Overwatch was typically given to newer team members, but Sarah had more combat experience than half the men in the room. She had served 2 tours in Iraq as a Marine before transferring to the Navy and earning her SEAL Trident. After the briefing, Sarah made her way to the armory to check her equipment. The familiar weight of her rifle brought her comfort. Weapons didn't care about gender. Bullets flew the same way regardless of who pulled the trigger. "Hey, Lady SEAL," called out Petty Officer First Class Danny Wilson as he approached her workstation. His tone was mocking, designed to provoke a reaction. "Maybe you should stick to the medical tent. Leave the real fighting to the men." Sarah continued, cleaning her rifle without looking up. "My name is Lieutenant Martinez," she replied calmly. "And my job is the same as yours, to complete the mission and bring everyone home alive." Wilson laughed harshly. "We'll see about that when the bullets start flying. This isn't some movie where the girl proves herself by the end. This is real life, and real life has consequences." As Wilson walked away, Sarah's hands tightened around her rifle. She understood their skepticism, even if she didn't agree with it. The SEALs were a tight-knit family who depended on each other for survival. Trust was earned through shared hardship and proven reliability under fire. But their dismissal of her abilities felt personal and unfair. Sarah had grown up in a military family. Her father was a Marine drill sergeant, and her mother served as an Army nurse. She had been around warriors her entire life and understood the weight of the responsibility she now carried. That evening, as Sarah sat alone in the mess hall eating dinner, she overheard a conversation at the next table that made her stomach turn. "I heard they're only sending her because of some diversity quota," whispered Seaman Roberts. "The brass wants to look progressive, so they're using us as their experiment." "It's going to get someone killed," replied another voice. "When things go wrong over there, we need to know that everyone on the team can handle themselves. I don't want to die because some politician wanted to make a statement." Sarah pushed her food around her plate, her appetite gone. She knew that proving herself would be an uphill battle, but she hadn't expected the hostility to be so thick and pervasive. Every conversation stopped when she entered a room. Every training exercise became a test of whether she belonged. Later that night, as she lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, Sarah's hand unconsciously moved to her left shoulder. Beneath her uniform shirt was a tattoo that told a story none of these men knew. It was a reminder of why she had fought so hard to be here, and why their opinions couldn't break her resolve. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Sarah Martinez had faced worse. She would prove her worth not with words, but with actions. The mark on her skin held secrets that would eventually silence every doubt and whisper of disrespect. The helicopter blades chopped through the night air as Sarah and her team flew toward their target deep in the mountains of Afghanistan. The mission was straightforward on paper: infiltrate a Taliban compound, gather intelligence, and extract without detection. But Sarah knew that no mission was ever as simple as it appeared in the briefing room. She checked her equipment for the third time, ensuring every piece was secure and ready. Her night vision goggles hung around her neck, and her suppressed rifle was loaded with a full magazine. The familiar pre-mission tension filled the aircraft as each SEAL prepared mentally for what lay ahead. "Remember, Martinez," Chief Rodriguez spoke over the helicopter noise, his voice carrying that same skeptical tone she had grown accustomed to. "Your job is to stay back and provide cover. Don't try to be a hero out there." Sarah nodded without expression, but inside, frustration burned like a flame. She had studied the mission plans more thoroughly than anyone else on the team. She knew every building layout, every possible escape route, and every potential danger zone. Yet they still treated her like a liability rather than an asset. The helicopter touched down in a clearing 2 kilometers from the target compound. As the team moved through the darkness, Sarah took her assigned position on a ridge overlooking the operation area. Through her scope, she could see the compound clearly: 3 buildings surrounded by a high wall, with guards patrolling the perimeter. Her earpiece crackled with radio chatter as the assault team moved into position. "Overwatch, do you have eyes on the target?" came Commander Davis's voice. "Affirmative," Sarah replied. "I count 4 hostiles on patrol, 2 more by the main gate. The pattern repeats every 3 minutes. Copy that. Beginning approach in 30 seconds. Sarah watched through her scope as her teammates moved like shadows toward the compound walls. Their training was evident in every calculated step and coordinated movement. Despite their treatment of her, she had to admit they were highly skilled operators. Everything went according to plan for the first 10 minutes. The team breached the outer wall and neutralized the guards without alerting the rest of the compound. Sarah provided updates on enemy positions as they moved from building to building, searching for the intelligence cache they had come to find. Then, everything changed in an instant. "Ambush. We've got multiple hostiles coming from the east." Rodriguez's voice exploded over the radio, panic evident despite his years of experience. "They were waiting for us. This was a trap." Through her scope, Sarah could see muzzle flashes erupting from hidden positions around the compound. Her team members dove for cover as bullets whined through the air around them. The Taliban fighters had set up a perfect ambush, using the intelligence-gathering mission as bait to draw the SEALs into a killing field. "We need immediate support," shouted Wilson over the radio. "There's too many of them. We can't reach the extraction point." Sarah's training took over as she acquired targets through her scope. Her first shot dropped an enemy fighter who was flanking her teammates from the north. Her second shot eliminated a sniper who had Rodriguez pinned down behind a low wall. "Overwatch. We need covering fire to reach the vehicles." Commander Davis's voice was urgent but controlled. "Can you provide suppression on the eastern approach?" "Negative," Sarah replied, her mind racing as she assessed the tactical situation. "There's too much ground to cover from here. You need someone to create a distraction and draw their fire." "That's not your job, Martinez," Rodriguez shouted over the sound of gunfire. "Stay in position and provide support." But Sarah could see what the others couldn't from their position on the ground. The Taliban fighters were moving to surround her team completely. In less than 5 minutes, her teammates would be trapped with no way out. The compound's layout created a natural funnel that the enemy was exploiting perfectly. Sarah made a decision that went against her orders, but aligned with her oath to protect her fellow soldiers. She abandoned her Overwatch position and began moving down the ridge toward the compound. Her rifle barked repeatedly as she engaged targets, drawing enemy fire away from her pinned teammates. "What are you doing, Martinez?" Rodriguez's voice carried both anger and fear. "Get back to your position." "Creating an exit route," Sarah replied calmly as she used hand grenades to clear a path through the eastern approach. "Move toward my position in 30 seconds. Her bold maneuver caught the Taliban fighters off guard. They had expected the SEALs to retreat toward their original extraction point, not advance through what appeared to be a suicide charge. Sarah's unexpected assault from their flank created enough confusion and casualties to break their coordinated attack. "Move! Move! Move!" Commander Davis ordered as Sarah's covering fire allowed the team to reach the extraction vehicles. As they drove away from the compound with enemy rounds pinging off their armored vehicles, the radio fell silent except for heavy breathing and the occasional status check. Sarah had disobeyed direct orders, but her actions had saved the entire team from potential annihilation. Back at base, as the team underwent debriefing, the atmosphere was different. The same men who had questioned her presence now looked at her with something approaching respect. She had proven that she could think tactically under pressure and put the team's survival above personal safety. But Sarah knew that one successful mission wouldn't erase months of doubt and skepticism. As she cleaned her rifle in the armory later that night, she could still feel the weight of their judgment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. The tattoo on her shoulder seemed to burn beneath her uniform, reminding her of why she couldn't give up, no matter how difficult the path ahead might be. 3 weeks after the Afghan mission, Sarah found herself back in California for advanced underwater demolition training. The successful operation had earned her a grudging acknowledgement from some team members, but the underlying tension remained. Respect in the SEALs wasn't given based on a single action. It had to be earned continuously through consistent performance under pressure. The training facility's pool stretched out before them like a blue expanse of challenge. Today's exercise involved underwater navigation in zero visibility conditions while carrying explosive charges. Each SEAL would have to swim through a maze of obstacles, plant charges at specific locations, and return to the surface within a strict time limit. "All right, people," barked Master Chief Peterson, the training instructor whose weathered face showed 3 decades of military service. "This exercise separates the real SEALs from the pretenders. One mistake down there, and you'll be reassigned to pushing papers at some desk job." Sarah adjusted her diving gear and checked her underwater breathing apparatus one final time. She had always excelled at underwater operations, but today felt different. The other SEALs were watching her more carefully than usual, waiting to see if her performance in Afghanistan was a fluke or a sign of genuine capability. Martinez called out Thompson, the same SEAL who had questioned her presence on the first day. "Hope you're not afraid of the dark down there. It gets pretty scary when you can't see your own hand." Sarah ignored the comment and focused on her mental preparation. She had memorized the underwater course layout during the briefing, creating a detailed map in her mind of every obstacle and checkpoint. Visualization had always been one of her strengths, allowing her to navigate complex environments even when visibility was zero. One by one, the SEALs entered the water and disappeared beneath the surface. Sarah watched as Rodriguez emerged after 12 minutes, followed by Wilson at 14 minutes. Both men had completed the course successfully, but their times were considered average by SEAL standards. When Sarah's turn came, she slipped into the water without hesitation. The pool's surface closed over her head like a liquid ceiling, cutting off all sound except for the steady rhythm of her breathing apparatus. The instructors had added a black dye to the water, making visibility absolutely zero beyond the length of her arm. Swimming downward, Sarah reached the maze entrance and began navigating by touch and memory. Her fingers traced along guide ropes and metal obstacles as she moved through the underwater course. The pressure in her ears increased with depth, but her training had conditioned her to ignore such discomfort. At the first checkpoint, she had to plan a practice explosive charge on a mock ship hull. Her movements were precise and economical, wasting no motion or energy. The charge clicked into place with a satisfying sound that vibrated through the water. Moving deeper into the maze, Sarah encountered a section where the guide rope had been deliberately tangled to simulate battle damage. Lesser swimmers might panic in such a situation, but Sarah methodically worked through the problem, using her fingers to trace the rope's path and find the correct route forward. The second checkpoint required her to cut through a thick cable using underwater tools. In darkness, this task became exponentially more difficult. Sarah had to work entirely by feel, positioning the cutting tool correctly and applying steady pressure while maintaining neutral buoyancy. As she worked, Sarah's mind wandered briefly to the tattoo hidden beneath her wetsuit. The ink told a story that none of her teammates knew, a story that explained why giving up was never an option for her. Every challenge she faced now was nothing compared to what had led her to this point. The final checkpoint lay at the deepest part of the course, where water pressure made every movement more difficult. Sarah had to retrieve a specific object from a collection of similar items, identifying it only by touch. Her fingers moved methodically across the objects until she found the one with the distinctive texture mentioned in the briefing. Swimming back toward the surface, Sarah could feel her air supply running lower than she preferred. The temptation to rush was strong, but panic led to mistakes, and mistakes led to failure. She maintained her steady pace, trusting her training and preparation. When she finally broke the surface, Master Chief Peterson was staring at his stopwatch with an expression of disbelief. 10 minutes and 47 seconds, he announced to the gathering of SEALs. That's the fastest time we've recorded on this course in over 2 years. The pool area fell silent, except for the gentle lapping of water against the sides. Sarah's performance had not only beaten her teammates' times, but had also set a new facility record. She climbed out of the pool with the same calm expression she wore during briefings, showing no sign of the satisfaction she felt inside. Thompson stood at the pool's edge, his earlier mockery replaced by stunned silence. Rodriguez nodded slowly, a gesture that carried more meaning than any words could convey. Even Wilson, who had been most vocal about women not belonging in combat roles, seemed to reassess his position. "How did you navigate so quickly in zero visibility?" asked Commander Davis, his tone now carrying genuine curiosity rather than skepticism. "Mental mapping and systematic movement," Sarah replied simply. "I visualized the course layout before entering the water and trusted my preparation." As the training session concluded and the SEALs headed back to the locker rooms, Sarah overheard a different kind of conversation than usual. Instead of questioning her abilities, they were discussing her technique and asking each other how she had achieved such remarkable performance. But she knew that even this success wouldn't completely eliminate their doubts. The SEAL community was built on tradition and brotherhood forged through shared hardship. Acceptance would come slowly, earned through consistent excellence rather than single moments of achievement. That evening, as Sarah sat alone reviewing training material for the next day's exercises, she touched the place where her tattoo lay hidden. Soon, she thought, the truth behind that mark would be revealed. And when it was, everything her teammates thought they knew about her would change forever. The medical bay at the naval base was unusually quiet as Dr. Rebecca Chun conducted the routine physical examinations required before the team's next deployment. Each SEAL underwent a thorough medical check to ensure they were physically prepared for the demanding mission ahead. Sarah sat on the examination table as Dr. Chun checked her blood pressure and heart rate. The doctor had been working with special operations teams for 5 years and had seen her share of battle scars and hidden stories written in ink across warriors' bodies. "I need to examine your shoulder and back area," Dr. Chin said professionally. "Please remove your shirt." Sarah hesitated for a moment, knowing that this moment would change everything. For months, she had kept her secret hidden beneath her uniform, but medical examinations made privacy impossible. She slowly pulled her shirt over her head, revealing the tattoo that covered most of her left shoulder and upper back. Dr. Chin's breath caught in her throat as she saw the intricate design. The tattoo was unlike anything she had ever seen on a military person. It wasn't the typical eagle, flag, or unit insignia that most service members chose. Instead, it was an elaborate memorial piece featuring names, dates, and symbols that told a story of profound loss and sacrifice. At the center of the tattoo was a detailed rendering of a Medal of Honor, surrounded by smaller military insignias and ribbons. Below the medal were three names written in elegant script: Captain James Martinez, Kia, Afghanistan; Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Kia, Iraq; and Corporal David Chun, Kia, Syria. Dr. Chin recognized the significance immediately. These weren't random names or fictional characters. They were real people who had died in combat. The dates and locations matched major military operations from the past decade. But what struck her most was the careful artistry and obvious personal meaning behind every element of the design. These names, Dr. Chin said softly, her professional demeanor giving way to human curiosity. Were they family members? My brother, my best friend, and my fiancé, Sarah replied quietly, her voice carrying a weight that spoke of grief processed but never forgotten. They all died serving their country. This tattoo is my way of carrying them with me. The doctor completed her examination in respectful silence, but Sarah could see the questions in her eyes. After Dr. Chin finished her notes and dismissed Sarah, she found herself in an ethical dilemma. Medical information was confidential, but she had seen something that gave new context to the skepticism and hostility Sarah faced from her teammates. Later that afternoon, Dr. Chun encountered Commander Davis in the base cafeteria. She couldn't share specific medical details, but she felt compelled to address the situation she had witnessed regarding Sarah's treatment by the team. "Commander," she said, choosing her words carefully, "I've been observing the dynamics within your team, and I think there are some things you should know about Lieutenant Martinez that might change how the team views her presence here." "What kind of things?" Davis asked, his interest piqued by the doctor's serious tone. "I can't share specific medical information, but I can tell you that her motivation for being here runs much deeper than career advancement or proving a point about women in combat roles. She has personal reasons for serving that are both profound and heartbreaking." Commander Davis studied the doctor's expression, recognizing the weight behind her carefully chosen words. He had been watching Sarah's performance closely since the Afghan mission, and her consistent excellence was becoming impossible to ignore. But the team's unity was crucial for mission success, and the underlying tension needed to be addressed. Meanwhile, in the team's common area, the usual post-examination discussions were taking place. Thompson was complaining about the physical requirements, while Rodriguez shared stories about previous deployments. Sarah entered the room to collect some training materials, and the conversation immediately shifted to a more subdued tone. "Martinez," Wilson said, his voice less hostile than usual, "I heard your underwater time from last week got posted on the facility record board. That's pretty impressive." Sarah nodded acknowledgement, but didn't engage in extended conversation. She had learned that her teammates' acceptance would come through actions, not words. Every interaction still felt like a test, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. As she gathered her materials, Sarah noticed Thompson watching her with a different expression than usual. Instead of skepticism or hostility, there was something that looked almost like curiosity. She wondered if her consistent performance was finally starting to change their perception of her. That evening, Commander Davis called a team meeting to discuss their upcoming mission parameters. As the SEALs gathered in the briefing room, the atmosphere felt different somehow. The usual undercurrent of tension regarding Sarah's presence seemed less pronounced. "Tomorrow we begin final preparations for Operation Thunderstrike," Davis announced. "This mission will require every team member to perform at their absolute peak. We're going after a high-value target in hostile territory, and there's no room for error." As he outlined the mission details, Sarah noticed that her role assignment had changed. Instead of Overwatch support, she was being assigned to the primary assault team. It was a significant shift that indicated growing confidence in her abilities. After the briefing, As the team members filed out of the room, Rodriguez approached Sarah with an expression she hadn't seen before. There was still wariness in his eyes, but it was mixed with something that might have been respect. "Martinez," he said quietly, "I don't know what your story is, but I can see that you're not here for the same reasons most people join the teams. Tomorrow's mission is going to be dangerous. We need to know that everyone has each other's backs." Sarah met his gaze directly. "You can count on me, Chief. I've never let a teammate down, and I won't start tomorrow." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "We'll see." As Sarah returned to her quarters that night, she knew that tomorrow's mission would be another crucial test of her place within the team. But she also sensed that something had shifted in the dynamics. Her tattoo remained hidden for now, but the truth it represented was starting to influence how others saw her, even without knowing the details. The memorial inked into her skin served as a constant reminder of why she couldn't give up, no matter how difficult the path ahead might be. The explosion ripped through the building with devastating force, sending chunks of concrete and twisted metal flying through the air like deadly projectiles. Sarah felt the shockwave knock her backward as her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out all other sounds. Dust and smoke filled the air, creating a gray fog that made visibility nearly impossible. Operation Thunderstrike had gone wrong in the worst possible way. What should have been a straightforward target elimination had turned into a nightmare when the enemy triggered explosives that brought down half the building where the SEALs were operating. Now, instead of completing their mission, they were fighting for survival in the rubble of what had been a 3-story structure. "Sound off." Commander Davis's voice cut through the ringing in Sarah's ears. "I need status reports from everyone." "Rodriguez here. I'm mobile, but pinned down behind some debris," came the chief's voice over the radio. "I can see Thompson about 20 meters north of my position. He's not moving." Sarah pushed herself up from the ground, ignoring the sharp pain in her left shoulder where a piece of concrete had struck her. Through the dust and smoke, she could see the devastating scope of the collapse. What had been a coordinated military operation minutes earlier now looked like a war zone from the worst combat footage. "Martinez here," she reported into her radio. "I'm mobile and can see Wilson trapped under some rubble near the east wall. His legs are pinned, but he appears conscious. Can you reach him?" Davis asked, his command voice steady despite the chaos around them. Sarah assessed the situation quickly. The path to Wilson's position was blocked by unstable debris that could shift and crush anyone who attempted to cross it. The smart tactical decision would be to wait for the dust to settle and plan a safer approach. But Wilson's position was deteriorating rapidly as more concrete shifted above him. "Negative on a safe approach," Sarah replied. "But I can reach him if I move fast." "That's not an order, Martinez," Davis said over the radio. "That debris field is too unstable. We wait for backup." But Sarah was already moving. She had learned in her previous military service that sometimes the difference between life and death came down to seconds, not minutes. Wilson had questioned her presence on the team from day one, but he was still her teammate, and no SEAL left another behind. She moved carefully, but quickly across the unstable debris, using her experience from urban warfare training to find the safest path through the destruction. Each step had to be calculated and precise. One wrong move could bring down more of the structure and kill them both. "Martinez, what are you doing?" Rodriguez's voice carried both concern and anger. "Get back to a safe position." "Getting our teammate out," Sarah replied as she reached Wilson's position. The Big SEAL was conscious, but obviously in pain. His legs were trapped under a concrete beam that would require leverage to move. "Sarah," Wilson said, using her first name for the first time since they had met. "You shouldn't have come. This whole section could come down." "Then we better work fast," Sarah replied, positioning herself to lift the beam. "On my count, pull yourself free." 1, 2, 3. Sarah strained against the massive weight of the concrete, feeling her muscles burn with the effort. Wilson pulled himself free just as Sarah heard the ominous creaking of more debris shifting above them. She grabbed Wilson's tactical vest and half-carried half-drag him towards safer ground as concrete chunks rained down around them. They had almost reached safety when Wilson's weight became too much for Sarah to support alone. Her injured shoulder, which she had ignored during the rescue, finally gave out, and they both stumbled. More debris crashed down, and for a moment, Sarah thought they would both be buried. Then, strong hands grabbed them both, pulling them to safety behind a solid wall section. Rodriguez and Davis had moved in to help complete the rescue, their earlier concerns about Sarah's unauthorized action replaced by focus on getting everyone to safety. "Thompson's in bad shape," Rodriguez reported as they regrouped. "He's unconscious and bleeding from a head wound. We need immediate medical evacuation." As Sarah helped tend to Thompson's injuries while they waited for extraction, Wilson grabbed her arm with his uninjured hand. His face was pale from pain, but his expression carried something she had never seen before: genuine respect and gratitude. "Why did you risk your life for me?" he asked quietly. "After everything I said about you not belonging here?" Sarah paused in her medical work and looked directly at him. "Because you're my teammate. That's what we do. But I haven't treated you like a teammate," Wilson admitted. "None of us have." Sarah was quiet for a moment before she spoke again. "Can I tell you something about why I'm really here?" Wilson nodded, wincing as she adjusted the field dressing on his legs. "I lost 3 people I cared about in combat zones over the past 5 years," Sarah said, her voice steady but carrying deep emotion. "My brother was a Marine captain killed by an IED in Afghanistan. My best friend died in Iraq when her convoy was ambushed. My fiancé was killed by a sniper in Syria while trying to rescue wounded soldiers." Wilson's expression changed completely as he processed this information. The hostility and skepticism that had defined his interactions with Sarah evaporated, replaced by understanding and something approaching shame. "All 3 of them died serving their country and protecting their teammates," Sarah continued. "I have their names tattooed on my shoulder to remind me why I do this job. I'm not here to prove anything about women in combat. I'm here to honor their memory by being the best soldier I can be." The extraction helicopter arrived before Wilson could respond, but Sarah could see that her words had fundamentally changed how he viewed her presence on the team. As they loaded the wounded teammates for medical evacuation, the other SEALs looked at Sarah differently than they had that morning. Back at base during the debriefing, Commander Davis addressed Sarah's unauthorized rescue action. "Lieutenant Martinez, you disobeyed direct orders during the operation. However, your actions saved Petty Officer Wilson's life and demonstrated the kind of courage and selflessness that defines what it means to be a SEAL." Later, as the team gathered in their common area, the atmosphere was completely different from the hostile environment Sarah had endured for months. Wilson, despite his injuries, had shared her story with the others. The knowledge that she was driven by personal loss rather than career ambition or political statements changed everything. "Martinez," Thompson said as she entered the room, his head bandaged but his spirit intact, "I owe you an apology. We all do. We judged you based on assumptions instead of character." Sarah nodded, but didn't dwell on the acknowledgement. "We're a team," she said simply. "That's all that matters." Rodriguez stepped forward, extending his hand to Sarah. "Welcome to the Brotherhood, SEAL. You've more than earned your place here." As Sarah shook his hand, she felt the weight of months of proving herself finally lift from her shoulders. The mark on her skin had remained hidden, but its meaning had finally been understood. She was exactly where she belonged.